The boardroom felt incredibly stuffy. A line of high-ranking individuals in their costly attire were clustered around the lengthy mahogany table, all staring at me. The lights above hummed, illuminating the setting with a piercing brightness. But nothing stung as sharply as the smug look on Daniel Cross's face. Daniel, the head of Crosstech Enterprises, reclined in his seat, showing off his conceit in every part of his expertly fitted suit. "Emma," he said, stretching out my name as if he found it amusing, "do you truly believe you can actually manage a company?" Tension filled the room. I could feel the disapproval, the hushed laughter hidden behind averted glances. I made my voice sound calm. "I think my plan explains itself, Mr. Cross." His smirk got wider. "Does it now?" He began walking toward me slowly. He walked around me like a hunter toying with its meal. "You're incompetent, Emma," he declared. "You lack the expertise, the intellect, and the imagination to be a leader." My hands balled into fists, my nails digging into my skin. "Honestly, I don't even understand why I gave you a job," he added, his voice filled with fake sorrow. "Maybe I just needed someone to make the coffee." Amusement spread through the room. Not everyone laughed, but enough people did to make me feel totally humiliated. I tightened my jaw, forcing myself to keep quiet because Daniel had no idea what I was capable of. Tomorrow, when the sun sets, that smirk would be wiped off his face. By the end of the day, it would be him gasping for air in this space, because what he was completely unaware of was that I'd already secured the controlling interest. I left that meeting room looking composed, even though inside, anger was boiling over. The elevator ride down felt like a physical assault, my heart racing as the polished walls mirrored the fire in my gaze. Daniel believed he'd broken me. He thought I was just some insignificant worker. He didn't have a clue that I'd spent so many months planning his ruin. I'd endured his constant torment for years, witnessing him destroy anyone who dared cross him. He loved to degrade people. But instead of letting him win, I acted undercover. I quietly built my network, created partnerships, and analyzed the company's vulnerabilities. Then, when the timing was right, I made my move. A quiet, invisible takeover. Through strategic transactions, I got 52% of the shares. I was now in charge. Tomorrow, Crosstech Enterprises would have a new boss. And Daniel, he was about to lose it all. The next morning, I entered the building, not as someone who worked there, but as the one in control. The vibe inside was entirely different. As I walked in, the murmurs began, and I could feel the glances coming my way, filled with hushed puzzlement. The atmosphere felt strained as I headed for the executive suite. Inside the boardroom, Daniel sat at the table's front, completely oblivious to what was about to unfold. He barely looked up when I entered. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I pushed a document across the table toward him. "Read it," I replied, keeping my voice calm and collected. He frowned as he turned the first page. His arrogant smile began to fade. His eyes quickly scanned the words, becoming wider with each sentence. The room was still and silent. Then in a quiet voice he asked, "What is this?" I leaned closer. "It means I'm now the owner of this company." The blood left his face, and that was the instant I'd been anticipating. Daniel's hands shook as he reviewed the small print as though the words would somehow shift. His breath became ragged. He looked up at me, and for the first time ever, he was unable to say anything. The formidable Daniel Cross was rendered speechless. "No, no, this can't be real," he whispered. "It is," I responded, reclining in my chair. "I now possess control of 52% of Crosstech, meaning your tenure as CEO has officially ended." His expression was one of utter shock. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted him, and I did. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Several seemed to feel relieved. Others appeared cautious. I'd endured Daniel's cruel rule for a long time, and now it was over. The person who'd belittled me publicly, the person who called me worthless, was now stripped of his power. A thick, oppressive quiet descended between us. After that, fear began to creep in. "Hold on," Daniel stuttered. "Emma, we can discuss this, right? You don't need to do this." I exhaled slowly, cocking my head to the side. "Discuss what exactly? You had so much time to talk when you were making a spectacle of me in front of the whole team." His jaw tightened up. "That was strictly business." "No, Daniel," I cut him off, and my voice became cold as ice. "This is business." Daniel sprang to his feet, slamming his hands onto a table. I created this company. Do you think you can manage it without me? A small, pleased smile touched my lips. Just watch me. The doors swung open. A security guard came in. He looked furious. You're kicking me out. No, Daniel, the company is the one dismissing you. The security guard advanced toward him. He struggled, his face burning with anger. You can't do this. But they could, and they did. I watched as Daniel Cross, the guy who was once thought to be untouchable, was led away, just like any ordinary criminal. And when he glanced back one last time, his gaze full of hatred, I simply smiled. Farewell, Daniel. And with that, the door closed behind him. Once the door shut behind Daniel, the silence in the boardroom was incredibly loud. No one moved, their expressions fixed in surprise. Some seemed worried, others appeared relieved, but everyone was unsettled. The person everyone dreaded for so long, the one who used to control everything with an iron fist, making folks feel small, causing tears, and tossing them out without a second thought, was out of the picture. I, who had been the target of his disrespect, was now in charge. I permitted the quiet to linger, allowing everyone present to fully take in the significance of the situation. After what seemed like a long pause, I rose to my feet. Let me be clear about something, I stated, and my words cut through the room like a sharp knife. This company will be different. There will be no more mistreatment, no more terror, and no more poisonous management. From this second on, Crosstech will no longer be a place where folks are treated like they're worthless. Some of the other leaders traded quick glances, as if they weren't sure what to think. But others, who had felt the sting of Daniel's style, had a flicker of optimism in their eyes. I addressed the HR director, someone who had been obligated to carry out Daniel's harsh rules for years. My first priority is this. Anyone who was wrongly fired under Daniel's reign will look at their cases again. If their dismissal was unfair, they'll get their jobs back right away. The HR director looked stunned for a moment, and then nodded her head quickly. One of the board members, Richard, who had always been Daniel's yes-man, coughed to get my attention. Emma, you need to realize Daniel's ways may have been rough, but he made this company money. If we change things suddenly... I turned my gaze toward him, and my eyes were steady and unwavering. Are you suggesting mistreating our staff was essential for our finances? Richard hesitated. I'm simply suggesting we should be cautious about making major alterations. I moved closer to him, speaking more softly. The only major change taking place now is that people will be treated with respect. If that's a problem for you, Richard, I'd recommend you resign. His complexion lost its color. He understood he no longer had Daniel to shield him. I understand, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. Feeling content, I stood up straighter. Excellent, meeting over. As the board members departed, I could already sense the balance of power changing. Some would fight it, but the majority of them would conform. My aim wasn't just to take Daniel's place. My goal was to redefine the direction of this organization. As I left the meeting room, I could feel many pairs of eyes focused on me. The word had already spread rapidly. Did you hear? She's now the CEO. She got rid of Daniel just like that? Maybe there's going to be some positive changes at last. A group of employees clustered near the break room, murmuring amongst themselves. The second they saw me, they immediately went quiet. I paused. Do you have anything you want to ask me? They looked uncertain. Then one of them, a woman in her early 30s, whose name tag showed Sophia Reynolds, spoke up. Is it true Daniel is gone? I confirmed with a nod, yes. He won't be returning. A few people gasped. Some quickly glanced at each other. Then a surprising moment occurred. One of the staff members, a young man, began to cry. I'm sorry, he choked out, appearing mortified. It's just, Daniel destroyed my life, he said, almost whispering. He slashed my pay in half because I took a week off to look after my sick mother. I had no choice but to keep working, even though we couldn't really cover the cost of her medication. A wave of fury clenched my heart. This was precisely the reason I'd taken this action. What's your name? I questioned. He hesitated, then said, Ethan Myers. I turned to the HR director, who had followed me outside. Ethan's salary? Bring it back to what it was originally, and give him some compensation for the financial setbacks he endured under Daniel's management. The HR director's eyes grew wide, but she nodded. Ethan's expression shifted into one of shock. You mean it? I looked directly at him with assurance. Yes, and if you ever need to take time for your family, take it. Nobody should have to pick between their job and the people they care about most. He let out a shaky breath, his voice wavering. "Thank you," I smiled at him. "You're welcome, now go do great work." And just like that, I watched the barriers of fear starting to fall. Daniel had constructed this company on a foundation of harshness. I was going to reconstruct it with honesty as its core. By the time lunch rolled around, the news outlets had already picked up on the takeover. "Breaking news," the news reports read. "Crosstech's cruel CEO ousted in an unexpected takeover. Insider report, former employee Emma Carter is the new CEO." How did I achieve this? I was sitting in my new office as the news stories began to pour in. My phone was vibrating nonstop with calls, journalists, financial backers, and even some old workmates. While some offered their congratulations, others were attempting to understand how I managed to pull everything off so flawlessly, though I brushed them all aside because I was focused on a single person, Daniel Cross. I figured Daniel would go public, deny everything, and try to paint himself as the wronged party. But he didn't, because his entire foundation was crumbling. Over the following few days, the full extent of the chaos he'd created became apparent. Unpaid bills, questionable secret transactions, and employees he had treated poorly were all filing legal actions. Everything was falling apart simultaneously. It wasn't my actions that destroyed him, he destroyed himself. Daniel Cross was a person who reveled in authority. His entire sense of self was wrapped up in being the CEO, the one calling the shots, the individual who controlled everyone with a mere gesture. But now he possessed nothing. During the first 3 days after he was ousted, he remained disturbingly silent. No communications, no telephone calls, and no public statements. Nevertheless, I knew it was just a matter of time before he broke. And on the 4th day, he did. It all began with an emergency meeting request, one to which he wasn't invited. The board sent the email to me, accompanied by a message. "Daniel wants a private meeting with you. He says it's important." I couldn't help but smile. Obviously, it was significant to him. I responded with just 2 words: "Declined." Less than 60 minutes later, my assistant informed me that Daniel had stormed into the office. Even though security was already on guard, I made my choice before they could get to him. "Let him in," I announced, sitting back in my chair with my legs crossed. I knew this would be interesting. The door swung open with a crash. Daniel burst into the room. His face was contorted with anger. His usual controlled demeanor had completely vanished. His pricey suit was a little messy, like he'd thrown it on in haste. His jaw was so tight, I was certain his teeth might break. "You have some audacity," he hissed, slamming his hands down on my desk. I cocked my head, appearing to ponder what he said. "I really do, don't I?" His nostrils widened. "This is my company," he said. "I created this from scratch, and you think you can just saunter in here and take everything?" I clasped my hands, my face remaining composed. "I didn't just walk in and take anything, Daniel. I earned it. I patiently worked things out for a long time. I outmaneuvered you. That's just how business is done." He chuckled sarcastically and shook his head. "You think you're so smart? You're nothing but a fake, a crook." At that moment, my face became cold. "Oh, is that right? A thief?" I got to my feet and leaned in close until we were looking directly at each other. "Tell me, Daniel, who stole years of their employees' lives by paying them unfairly, who took away the pride of the people you degraded, who stole the future from the ones you fired for fun?" He clenched his jaw, but I kept going. "Every single dishonest transaction, every instance of corruption, and every misuse of authority, I'm fully aware of all of them. I possess the records, the paperwork, and the messages. I could have revealed everything about you to the public, but instead, I chose to handle things through proper legal channels." I stopped, then a smile touched my lips. "But if you'd prefer I share all of it with the media, I'm perfectly willing to change my mind." Something I hadn't witnessed before flashed in his eyes. It was fear. A tiny drop of perspiration appeared on his forehead. He realized I wasn't lying. He murmured, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "You don't have to do this, Emma." Oh, now he wanted to strike a deal. I folded my arms across my chest. "What exactly do you believe I'm already doing?" He took a sharp breath. We can find a solution, a collaboration." I almost burst out laughing. "You want a collaboration? After you've called me worthless? After you told me I should just go make coffee?" He struggled to swallow. "I made a mistake, all right. I recognize that now." You clearly have abilities, but you don't have complete knowledge about managing a company. I can still offer assistance." There it was. The desperation. Daniel Cross, the man who never expressed regret and who always believed he was invincible, was reduced to pleading for a chance to maintain some importance. And I was going to savor every second of his decline. I allowed the quiet to linger. I let him feel the pressure. I allowed the impact of his plea to sink in. Then I responded, "No." His face registered a change. First bewilderment, then anger. "You're making a misstep." I moved from behind my desk, walking around him in the same manner he'd once circled me in that meeting room. I was definitely underestimated. You all clearly thought I was just some innocent girl who would meekly take whatever you decided to give me. I moved closer, and my voice dropped. "I don't need you, Daniel. I never have." He balled up his hands. "You honestly believe you can handle things here without me?" I gave a little smile. "I know I can, though," he gasped quietly. He looked at me for a long time and then let out a shaky breath. Daniel Cross was totally defenseless for the first time ever. He was defeated. And he knew it. Everything went downhill for Daniel after that confrontation. The people who had blindly backed him just vanished. They pulled their support suddenly. Employees that he had done wrong started telling their stories publicly. Lawsuits that had been kept quiet while he was in charge came back into the light. His old friends, one after another, deserted him, wanting to stay far away from the mess. In just 7 days, the man who had owned this company was reduced to nothing more than a warning in the business world. And me, I was just beginning. The first thing I did as the CEO was to fix what Daniel had broken. I spoke with the department heads, and I changed the policies that weren't fair, putting ethical practices in place. We changed the salaries, we brought back the employees who were mistreated, and the poisonous atmosphere Daniel had created. I destroyed it completely. Crosstech wasn't just focused on money anymore. It was focused on its workers. And the employees? They finally felt secure, something they hadn't felt in years. However, I knew not everyone wanted me to win. There were news sources that tried to make me the bad guy. They wanted to portray me as the heartless woman who took Crosstech, but I never backed down. I conducted press conferences, speaking the truth. And when the people who worked there supported me, recounting their own experiences with Daniel's mistreatment, the media was forced to alter their story. I wasn't the antagonist, I was the rescuer. One night, as I was departing the building, I saw him standing across the street. It was Daniel. His pricey suit was missing. His face was covered in stubble. His hair was a mess. He seemed defeated. Briefly, we made eye contact. And for the first time, he didn't fix me with a hateful stare. He simply looked exhausted. Despite all that had happened, I felt no joy in seeing him suffer. Because the reality was I had already triumphed. Against my better instincts, I went over to him. "Daniel," I murmured. He tensed up, probably expecting me to make him feel small. But I didn't. I reached into my bag, took out a folded piece of paper, and gave it to him. "What is this?" he asked in a raspy voice. "A job," I asked plainly. He looked up quickly. His eyes grew big. You won't be the leader," I explained. "But if you want to start over, I'm giving you one opportunity. Take it or reject it." For quite a while, he just gazed at me. Then slowly he took the paper, and for the first time ever, Daniel Cross murmured 2 words I never thought I'd ever hear. "Thank you." The cool night air brushed my face as I remained in my office, gazing at the city's silhouette. The building's lights mirrored themselves in the pane, a symbol of my journey. This very office, this entire corporation, once belonged solely to Daniel Cross. Now it was *mine*. More significantly, I didn't just get even. I had actually resurrected something that had been in tatters for a long time. Crosstech Enterprises was no longer a place of anxiety. It was a place of creativity, honor, and equality. The people who used to dread the start of their workday were now appreciated. Units that had been disorganized flourished under the influence of new leaders. And Daniel? I provided him with an opportunity. What he did with that chance was his own choice. I turned from the window, letting out a slow breath. I no longer felt any resentment. The rage that had lingered was gone. All that remained was a clear view. I had fought relentlessly, put in the effort, and succeeded. Not just against Daniel, but against my own uncertainty, the anxieties, and the internal voices that whispered that I wasn't up to par. Now I was at the apex. Not as a person who had been wronged, not as somebody being used by others, but as a person in charge. And I deserved all of it. As I secured my office door and entered the lift, I considered the future, because my story wasn't finished. It was just the start. As the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I observed employees who were still there, working late, catching up over coffee, beaming as they talked about fresh concepts. The atmosphere in the office was completely transformed. I felt hopeful. I was filled with life. From behind the reception desk, Sophia, the staff member who'd asked me questions on my inaugural day as the CEO, gave me a wave. "Off to your house, Ms. Carter?" I asked with a smile. "Yep, but I'll return to work again tomorrow." She beamed. "We're pleased to have you." Those simple words meant the world to me. Because I wasn't merely taking control of a business. I had built something that would last. As I stepped outside and felt the chilly evening air, I knew for a fact one thing. Daniel Cross had wrongly judged my capabilities. The whole world had thought I wasn't good enough. But in the end, I had achieved success. And I'd done it on my own terms, with honesty, with resilience, with compassion.